Well, good morning. This is Ian R. Crane. It's morning. In fact, it's brilliant, bright sunshine, somewhat diffused by some rather unusual cloud formations. So it's shining right into my eyes here. Anyway, it's the morning of Tuesday, 14th of August, 2018. And this is a somewhat, I was planning on taking a break until September. But something's occurred, not so much in the anti-fracking domain as in the campaign by the establishment to shut down all opposition. And those of you who've been following what's occurring over the last few months will know that INEOS, UCOG and Quadrilla have all sought injunctions against any form of effective protest. In other words, yeah, you can have your free speech as long as you stand in a box and basically don't cause anyone any issues. That's not democracy. That's a charade of democracy. And, what we're seeing is the courts effectively establishing a raft of rulings, which de facto become legislation, which effectively completely overlays parliamentary law. So in other words, parliamentary law is only applicable if the corporations feel that it goes far enough. And if the corporations don't feel that it goes far enough, then they go to the civil courts and they seek to get an injunction, which then imposes extreme penalties against people who conduct actions which would normally just simply incur perhaps a fine. Well, yesterday, this whole ramp up of the corporatocracy took another very sinister turn. And this was due to a decision in the Gateshead courts in a case brought by Gateshead City Council against Mark Steele, who has been campaigning for certainly over the last 12 months to raise awareness of the dangers and the risks associated with the 5G technology and also the issues associated with the frequencies emitted by the LED street lamps. And Mark has accumulated evidence from in his hometown of an increase in stillbirths and an increase in postnatal trauma amongst newborns, a phenomenal rise in nosebleeds, particularly amongst young children, and a rise in cases of depression. And he associates this very much with the rollout of the testbed of the LED street lamps and the 5G transmitters in Gateshead. Now, Mark has tried to do the right thing. He tried to address it with Gateshead Council as long ago as November of last year. He didn't get very far. And so he took it to the national press, and the national press in April ran a number of articles expounding upon his concerns. I, of course, invited Mark to speak at AV9 in May, gave an excellent presentation. Well, yesterday, Gateshead City Council took Mark Steele to court to get a gagging order. But let's just have a look at Gateshead City Council. Now, the mayor of Gateshead is a lady by the name of Jill Green. And she's been mayor of Gateshead since May of this year. Previously, she was the deputy mayor, but she served on the council since 2011. And Jill Green, what are you doing? Are you sitting back and just allowing your council to gag somebody who has concerns about the health of the residents in Gateshead? And those health concerns are directly attributed to the policy of the 5G and LED streetlight rollout of Gateshead City Council. So Jill Green, you're very much in the frame here, and along with the leader of Gateshead City Council, who is a man by the name of Martin Gannon. Now, Martin Gannon has been subject of some media attention in the Northeast, not least because of his expense claims. And earlier this year, he claimed £2,300 of taxpayers' cash to attend a conference in Cannes between March the 13th and 16th. And of course, he has put forward all the justifications as to why he needed to attend this conference. But of course, it was done on the back of the Gateshead taxpayers. And it was also established that over the last 4 years, his expense claims for meals are actually more than double all the other leaders of the major Northeast councils. So between the period of 2014 and 2017, council leader Martin Gannon claimed nearly £3,000 in meal expenses, whereas the total claim by the other councillors in the Northeast, council leaders this is, was £9,623. So just to put this in perspective, the Sunderland City Council leader, Paul Watson, in that same period, he claimed £1,165.50. Newcastle Council City leader, Nick Forbes, claimed just £364.75. North Tyneside Mayor, Norma Redfern, claimed just £80.67. Grant Davey, the leader of Northumberland County Council, claimed £35. And Simon Hennig, the Durham Council leader, claimed absolutely nothing. Whereas Martin Gannon claimed £5,003.64. So when you've got a leader like Martin Gannon who milks his position as the city leader for everything he can get, there is the distinct possibility, of course, that somebody of this ilk is susceptible to the corporate incentive, which may be why Gateshead is the testbed, or one of the testbeds, for 5G and LED streetlight technology. Well, Martin Gannon clearly doesn't like the fact that Mark Steele has been pushing these concerns, and along with the evidence to support his concerns, across the local, the national, and indeed the international media. So yesterday, an injunction hearing was scheduled to take place, which it did take place. And Mark took along a number of people to witness the proceedings, only to be told that the hearing was going to be conducted in secret, and that the only people in the courtroom would be the representatives of Gateshead City Council, Mark Steele, and the district judge. Well, here we go. You know, this is the first move towards introducing legislation which basically nobody can question because it's all done in secret. Well, during the course of the hearing, it was proposed that the actual case be adjourned to October. No surprise there, of course, because the longer they can kick it down the road, then they've got the temporary gagging order in place. So right now, Mark Steele is effectively gagged from saying anything which might embarrass Gateshead City Council. But Mark Steele doesn't need to say anything because Gateshead City Council has embarrassed itself by seeking this gagging order. Now, if this is allowed to go unchallenged, then you can bet your bottom dollar that other local authorities are going to do exactly the same thing, which is why what we saw within the fracking campaign, INEOS seeking an injunction, then followed by UCOG and Quadrilla. Now, INEOS have an injunction in place pending the appeal hearing, which is scheduled for next March. Quadrilla have an injunction in place thanks to Judge Mark Pelling and his ruling on July the 11th. UCOG, the ruling is scheduled to be announced anytime soon. And, you know, we can expect the other companies to follow suit, to shut down any expression of opposition against an industry which is proven to cause horrendous damage to the air quality, to the quality of soil, to the quality of groundwater, to the potential risk of contamination of aquifers, and of course the negative health impact that each of these elements of contamination will have on local population. With 5G, last September, a report was issued by scientists representing 36 countries who all called for a moratorium on 5G technology pending further study. Because, you know, 5G is not just 4G plus. It's a military technology. It's a battlefield technology that is being used, or potentially will be used, to increase the capacity of the internet exponentially. They absolutely need this microwave technology to establish the Internet of Things, i.e. where everything has an IP address and everything can be tracked. But it's a phased array technology, and it's this phased array technology which has been linked to the massive increase in PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, of ex-service personnel. People try to, or the military and the government try to claim that it's related to their experiences on the battlefield. But, you know, that's always been obviously a hazard of the job, as it were, if you go into the military. But this problem of PTSD and suicides amongst ex-personnel, ex-service personnel, particularly female service personnel, many of whom have been working closely on these, with these communication systems, is rising exponentially. And recently in the British media, we've seen articles reporting that suicides amongst young women have doubled, more than doubled, over the past 20 years, which, funnily enough, roughly coincides with the massive increase in phone masts around the country. And that's 2G, 3G, 4G. 5G is something else completely. And of course, the establishment don't want you to know that they're running these tests. But every time something else manifests, like the increase in suicides amongst students at Bristol University, and then it's quietly slipped out that Bristol University has been a testbed for 5G technology. So if there were real concerns amongst the establishment and people who supposedly represent communities on the local council, you would think that they would actually take any concerns seriously and attempt to either address those concerns or at least put a halt to the push for this technology until such time as it's been properly evaluated. But no, none of that, because it seems that the corporations are able to effectively push all ethics aside. So what we are witnessing right now is the gagging of anyone who has the audacity to challenge the corporate agenda. So Mark Steele may be restricted because he may be potentially putting his personal assets or even his liberty at risk if he makes any comment which embarrasses Gateshead City Council. But that doesn't stop the rest of us. So my counsel to people watching this, and particularly people in the northeast of England, because in case you haven't realised, then the British government really doesn't give a flying frack about you or your families. You are simply collateral damage, potentially. You are simply a resource to be used by the corporations. And if, unfortunately, your physiology isn't conducive with the technology that these companies want to roll out, then that's just unfortunate. And the fact that the NHS, of course, is being wound down, so it's not going to be able to deal with these problems as they manifest, well, that's just very unfortunate. You're a long way from Westminster and no one really cares. It's time to wake up and recognize that, you know, even though 85% of the population are, you know, unfortunately are not capable of actually taking a look at the bigger picture, and even if they are, they don't have the time because they're run ragged trying to earn enough money to keep a roof over the head of their family and food on the table. But for those people who are able to embrace the bigger picture and see what's going on, then if you know, then you have a responsibility to participate. Because if we don't participate, then effectively we are simply sanctioning the progression of technologies which serve the corporations to the absolute detriment of the populations who happen to be in the firing line. And unlike fracking, which effectively targets the rural north of England, right from the Lancashire, Cheshire coastline right across to Yorkshire and Lincolnshire, 5G is going to impact on every community right across, not just the UK, but ultimately the planet, because this 5G rollout is scheduled for 2020 on a global basis. And of course, this is very much linked to the massive tree removal. You know, earlier in the year, it was patently evident that the Sheffield contract with Amy to remove 17,500 trees from Sheffield was directly linked to the rollout of 5G, which requires a phone mast every 300 meters or so. And as I've said many times before now, if you're interested in looking at the confirmation of the impact on the trees, then look at the promo video produced by Bournemouth City Council, which acknowledges that it's not just trees, even hanging baskets. Hang you up and speak to you later. So, you know, the reason that trees and hanging baskets are a problem is primarily due to the moisture. And that's why University of Surrey have acknowledged in their white paper on 5G that you know, trees with foliage and water, i.e. rain, are a major problem for 5G technology. It's the water that's a problem. And what are we primarily made of? It's time to get involved. And maybe the anti-fracking community is actually the nursery for 5G, because fracking targets at the moment about 30% of the UK. 5G will tackle or challenge or threaten 100% of the people across the UK. So Mark was trying to call me there. I'll have a chat with Mark, and I will give an update later this week. I'm not proposing to re-establish the morning 8:30 live stream until the first week of September. I want to let everyone enjoy their summer break while they can. But this was too important not to put out a live stream this morning. So thanks for listening, and get on the case. Gateshead City Council, and particularly the leader of Gateshead City Council, Martin Gannon, must not be allowed to pursue these pernicious and draconian gagging orders. You have a great day. Hello.
Glad it wasn't your hour-long one.
Sorry?
Glad it wasn't your hour-long one.
Yeah.
I was wanting to walk across one.
Say again?
I was wanting to walk to the toilet, but I didn't want to.
Oh, you can always go behind.
Well, good morning.
Yeah. Well, you can walk past anyway.
This
Just
is
shows people on
Ian
camera.
Crane. It's a beautiful morning. In fact, it's
I know. I can
bright
feel it around
sunshine,
around my ankles.
somewhat diffused by some
Come on.
rather unusual cloud formations, and it's shining right into my eyes here. Anyway, it's the morning of Tuesday, 14th.
Yeah, for sure.
2018. And this is a somewhat impromptu and unexpected and unplanned live stream because I was planning on taking a break
let me have a
until
look.
September.
Can't remember what I've still
But
got.
something's occurred, not so much in the anti-fracking domain as in
let me just see what I can find.
the campaign by the establishment to shut down all opposition. And those of you who've been following what's occurring over the last few months will know that INEOS, UCOG and Quadrilla have all sought injunctions against any form of effective protest. In other words, you know, yeah, you can have your free speech as long as you stand in a box and basically don't cause anyone any issues. That's not democracy. That's a charade of democracy. And, you know, what we're seeing is the courts effectively establishing a raft of rulings,
a stapler,
which
but there should be a staple
become
gun.
legislation, which effectively completely overlays parliamentary law. So in other words, parliamentary law is only applicable if the corporations feel that it goes far enough. And if the corporations don't feel that it goes far enough, then they go to the civil courts and they seek to get an injunction, which then imposes